Welcome to the Insider Podcast at Heritage Museums and Gardens, where every other week we chat with guests and museum staff about all the exciting things that are happening in season here at the museum. My name is Judith Getz, and I'm happy to be your host today. In this episode, we're going to chat with Mal Condon, Heritage Museums and Gardens Curator of Hydrangeas, all about hydrangeas. Wonderful to have you here, Mal.
Great to be here. This is a perfect day, too. My goodness.
Oh, it absolutely is. And this is actually, we're sitting here in the hydrangea garden.
Display garden.
Display garden.
Display garden. You do know we have the two differentiations. This is the display garden. This was the start with the Cape Cod Hydrangea Society now 10 years ago. Very significant. Started out with a very small planting in these two rows right here. And then we've added the rest of this over time. And so it's been a wonderful synergy. There's no contract. It's literally a handshake. And they've maintained the garden. Have been very, very definitely positive even in the planting. We'll get together a group of digger men, as I call them. Mm-hmm. And the gals come and help too. And we've moved and redone these beds largely with that group.
Well, let me ask you this. A lot of people associate hydrangeas with this particular area in New England. There have been a lot of beautiful pictures that are taken. Sure, the Cape, the islands.
Yep.
Can they grow elsewhere?
Well, the reason they do well here on the Cape is the ocean provides us, in the good years, provides us with good temperance. We don't always have that. The last 5 years have been a bit wonky in that regard. There's always been some little thing that's taken us away from having a perfect event. But we keep going, you know. And every one of the winters has had some little different wrinkle. For instance, this one, you may recall.
In 2018.
Well, it was started in 2017. Christmas Day started it. We got suddenly very, very cold, and that extended into mid-January. Mm-hmm. And we had a period in that time of 11 or 12 days when we did not go above freezing. Now, we have that in other winters. It was the coldest weather we had the entire winter. After that, it never got as cold or as long, the duration. But what was significant this time was that we'd had a relatively mild autumn. All of a sudden, bingo. And when we talk about concerns of what doesn't flower, it's only one species. It's Hydrangea macrophylla.
Okay.
All the rest in this garden flower beautifully every year.
Now, tell me this, for those that are unfamiliar with the plant itself, a lot of people have seen the purplish color, but that's not the only color they come in, is it?
No, but the purple is confined, and the reason macrophyllas account for 85% of all hydrangeas produced, one species does.
Okay.
And the reason is it has this magnificent range of color. Purples are totally indicative of Hydrangea macrophylla.
Okay.
If you look at the arborescens that you see up here at the entrance, white and some shade will get some lime color to them. There is some pink varieties available there. Same is true in the paniculatas, you know, the big hardy panicle shaped flowers. We have lots of them here and they look great. But those plants are very winter hardy. Mm-hmm. And they flower, the buds are produced, and in succession flowering follows.
So is there...
Macrophylla is different.
It's different? Okay.
The buds typically on the older traditional varieties form in late autumn. They must survive the winter. The buds must survive the winter to be our July flowers the following year. That's the dichotomy.
So it's a complex plant.
It's a complex plant. It's beautiful, but it's complex. And because of its sensitivity to weather, and particularly cold, see, it's a species that's native to maritime Japan. Mm-hmm. It grows in magnificent fashion in New Zealand. And why are those places so special? Most temperate climates on Earth, because they're surrounded totally by water.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And so you have this, macrophyllas don't like it hot, don't like it cold, and don't like sudden change, particularly cold. So, if you will, it's the raw genetic makeup of the plant that we live with.
So I have heard actually about your travels.
Yes.
And we jumped right into the hydrangea plant itself, but I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about yourself. How did this all come together for you?
Oh my goodness. It goes back a long, long time. I lived in western Massachusetts and I grew paniculatas and arborescens in my garden, but I always marveled at the blues. And when somebody, and 99% of the questions we get asked when people come up to us, you know right off the bat, is it a blue? Oh yes, I hope it is. Well, anyway, this is how it all got going. So I went to Nantucket Island in 1966, and I couldn't believe what I saw because they grow beautifully there. Mm-hmm. Better than they do here. Not by much, but they do grow a little bit better. Well, here was blue. Here was red. I mean, fuchsia red in the hydrangeas. Even some of the purples. Wow. And it is a wow plant.
Yeah,
And that's the reason we persevere.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, I got interested in it then, this is 40 years ago, and started growing them, started propagating them, and eventually went into business doing it. I've since retired. Not really.
Yeah, I've seen you hard at work here.
Yeah. My wife will tell you, what do you mean he's retired? But you know, it's a great thing. It's great for me, and I think it's great for Heritage that I'm here because we're going to make this an even better hydrangea garden than it currently is. Mm-hmm. We want this to really be the second reason people come to this, plants-wise. Mm-hmm. Rhododendrons for sure. Dexter's work is fabulous. I mean, you see it now in wonderful regal form. Mm-hmm. The beauty is that hydrangeas are wonderful companions because they follow sequentially in bloom.
And just so that those that are listening to this
Mm-hmm.
are aware, because I certainly, as a relative newbie, shall we say, to the plant
Yeah.
world, we're talking about blooming for the rhododendrons usually in the end of May.
Starts end of May, and they'll carry on into mid-June. Some of the species, the rhodos, about the time they finish, we're within 10 days, 2 weeks, we start to bloom on the hydrangea side. So it's a wonderful companionship
Mm-hmm.
in terms of blooming. That's
Well,
perfect for a public garden like this.
Oh, it absolutely
Can't
is.
beat it.
It
Can't
absolutely
beat it.
is.
Can't beat it. It's interesting that the Heritage was slow to get to this point. And I really must credit the Cape Cod Hydrangea Society initially in promoting that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was a little bit involved then. I'm the past president of the Cape Cod Hydrangea Society. But I thought this was a wonderful start. This used to be a daylily area.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah. And anyway, we started these plantings. As I said, these first 2 rows were the original plantings, and we've replanted the whole thing. But it's where it started. So you're looking more or less at the history of the 10 years is right here in front of us.
Oh, that's terrific.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
But anyway, back to my time. I mean, it's a plant I just loved. I was started out, as most people do, or many people do, as a vegetable gardener.
Uh-huh.
You know.
Yeah, I do.
And I got interested in woody ornamentals. I did a lot of perennial work initially, and I said, you know, I don't know. They're great, but they're a lot of fussing and the like. Not that these aren't a lot of fussing too, but the flower on hydrangeas, long-lived plants if well planted and well maintained. I mean, there were so many positive reasons to choose this woody ornamental for me, and that's what I did.
Now, we have a lot of visitors who
Mm-hmm.
come specifically to see you. We have classes that actually assist people with the growing of their own plants. And I know that you've done already, I believe in the month of April, you had a class called Planting and Replanting.
Well, in April we had pruning first.
Okay, pruning first.
Then in
All right.
May we did planting, replanting, because May is a good month to do that.
Mm-hmm.
June is okay too here for us on the Cape. Going back a little bit to that, one of the reasons that we do well on the Cape is the water is literally all around us here too. Mm-hmm. Our downside from a weather point of view is that we have the huge landmass to our west. And the interior landmass suffers from 2 things, hotter in summer and colder in winter.
Okay.
It's just how it is.
Yeah.
Well, we get that carryover, unfortunately. If we could cut the Cape off and move it 40 miles offshore, we'd be just as good as Japan and New Zealand.
Oh, that sounds like a wonderful idea.
I don't know about that.
Well, we have a variety of other classes, of course, and I would invite people
just to finish.
Mm-hmm.
In May, and then May we did planting, replanting, and then we don't do anything in July. We do. Sorry, the end of June. I'm getting ahead of myself. The end of June, we're going to do irrigation this year because we think irrigation is within the grasp, particularly today, of the home gardener. Mm-hmm. Big improvements in the supplies that are needed to do it. It's become easier.
Well, what do you mean when you say irrigation?
All the plants you see in here have surface irrigation. We've ringed these plants. There's rings, and each ring contains emitters that slowly dribble out the water strictly at the surface level.
Oh.
So the plants get uniform watering because it's circular. And the other thing is you're not doing what we call aerial irrigation, where as much as 70% of it's lost to evaporation.
Okay.
We're putting it right at the root zone. And if you will look as cut back as hard as these are now, you come out here, this is the first year you'll be doing this, you yourself. He's seen it before. You won't recognize this. All of these will be 4 to 5 feet height and
Now,
width.
I've seen the pictures. They're spectacular.
Oh, they're spectacular.
Yeah.
The transition, and that's the other thing that I always marveled at. When you look in March at what's in here, it's what I call the brown stick season. And then you come and look at it in July, you said. But anyway, it is such a magnificent transition. It is a wild plant. How can you not love it? And that's why we pursue, that's why we persevere. I guess that's the right word to use. We persevere to make it better.
Absolutely.
So I think the irrigation thing, here's the thing. People can say that, oh, I'm a good waterer. I'll get out there and do that every other day faithfully.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you will, maybe you won't. Somebody comes to visit, you get called away, and you say, oh, you know what I didn't do? I didn't water the plants. So with a timer set up on them, which is now, that's the other big benefit. Battery operated timers hooked up to your normal town water supply at home or well, whatever you may have, makes it easy.
Yeah, it's just automatic.
And if you want wow hydrangeas, why these look so good? Because of that surface irrigation. You come and look at my garden at home, people say, oh my God, look at your plants. What do you do? I says, I can't tell you, it's a secret.
So now we're letting that secret out
But
right now.
But the secret's simple, it's irrigation.
Okay.
And then in August, and we've had enough interest in this, we did it initially, sort of a little prelim, as part of in the Hydrangea Festival, we talked about propagation. Well, we had a lot of people who've really come forward and said, geez, I'd like to hear more about that, rather than just a, 30-minute snippet like we do. So this year we're doing it for the first time, propagation. They're easy plants to propagate. They're tough to grow, but they're easy to propagate. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what's making them so special, I guess. Huh?
Well, I think so. And the thing is, it's within the realm of home gardeners to do it. And, I used to, in my nursery days, and our nursery was on Nantucket, we used to do classes like this. And propagation, we do it in July over there. It's long before the festival business got going. We'd always be a sellout. And the same people would come back, and I used to say, what are you doing here? He says, well, we're not sure, we just want to hear you again.
So you're attaining some rock star status with this particular plant?
Well, if it's something you concentrate on, I'm an engineer by education, not a horticulturist. And I always say, typical of engineers, I know a lot about very few things. One of them is hydrangeas.
And things do change, too.
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
They absolutely do change. And as we were mentioning in irrigation, 10 years ago, we couldn't do this. The equipment wasn't available to do this. Yes, you could get away with the aerial irrigation, but to do what we're doing now, you couldn't have accomplished that in the same way.
Now, as you move along through the season, of course, you talked about a variety of the different things that are done, but we end with winterizing.
We end with winterizing. Winterizing, we've done some, and I've been involved with winterizing for probably 25 years. And I'm always trying to find ways to get more of these plants to winter well despite the weather, so that we have reliable flowering. Well, have we succeeded? Not totally, to be perfectly honest. We do know this, that if we protect plants of that year that went in other words, new plants, we've made a big positive move in the right direction. Because their first winter is the big struggle. When you think about it, it's pretty simple. The plant's been in the ground a number of years. The root system reaches out a long ways. Gets below the frost line. Even a 3-gallon plant that you planted last early spring, let's say, or early summer, it's only had 1 year to try to get its roots out of the root ball area that you planted. It certainly doesn't reach down very far.
No.
So that's
Do you
kind of
cover
simple.
them with
We
burlap?
cover them. We cover them. We got various ways we do it. We don't use burlap. We have wrapped. I'll share this with you. 2015, when we had the great Hydrangea conference here, we sure wanted everything to be good. We wrapped about 350 plants here. We were not by any means totally successful.
No, okay. So they have a mind of their own.
15 was a tough winter.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we had a lot of snow, and snow is a good insulator. Snow is not your worry. The big worry is no snow cover, and we get a nor'easter that comes up here, and it's not the beginning of the nor'easter itself, because we get warmth off of the Gulf Stream. We get rain, winds come from the east, then they switch to the northeast, then to the north. This is where the start is. Then to the northwest and the north. Temperature drops, the air becomes fiercely dry, because where's it coming from? The big land mass to our west.
Okay.
Absolute cold and no absolute moisture. So the buds die from desiccation. So it's a double hit. It's cold and the wind effect.
Well, you can see, I mean, the amount of care that goes into these plants, you can see that there's obviously a direct passion involved for a lot of people.
Well, there has to be. You know the old story, love what you do, and I try to preach that all the time. If you really love hydrangeas, you got to commit yourself to doing just a little bit more than you might have otherwise.
Now, I want to mention one other thing to you. We obviously have a hydrangea festival. It takes place in July here, and it kind of kicks off with Hydrangea University.
Yes, and it's great. This is the second year that it's being held here at Heritage. We did it. The Cape Cod Hydrangea Society deserves the credit for developing Hydrangea U. And they held it the first year, and they held it in Barnstable High School, and it was a very good attendance for a first go, 120 some people. And you know, when you consider minimum advertising at those days and the like, but the perfect place to do it was here. And so I managed to convince the powers to be that let's join with Heritage and do it here. So it is a joint venture, a joint effort, continues, and I think it's great that it is. But this is the site. Why not do it here, where we have these outstanding gardens?
And there are going to be 3 speakers that day.
3 speakers that day, and the 3 speakers this year, Natalia Hamill, she's a new product manager for Bailey Nurseries, and Bailey's been very generous to us here in terms of supplying us with plant material. Wonderful people, great to get along with. And Bailey Nurseries is the Endless Summer people. And so we have a lot of their plants in here, particularly in the test garden across the way on the other side.
Okay.
We have a few in here, but that's where it is. I should comment here the distinction. Test garden has new plants. Display garden has some of the wonderful old varieties of Hydrangea macrophylla that have been around for 100 years. 60% of what's here is no longer in commercial cultivation.
You're kidding.
No. And the reason is, you know how things move ahead, new must be better?
Yeah, sure.
Not always.
Yeah.
But it's a wonderful source of germplasm. In other words, there's still some great old flowering varieties here if we could just make them a little hardier. So this is where the breeding piece comes along. And our second, or the most major speaker, well, I'm speaking too. But the third speaker was really great, is Dr. Michael Durr. And without a doubt, he is the woody ornamental guru of our country. A wonderful speaker, great guy, tremendous enthusiasm, has given us a lot of his time here and his generosity. It's going to be a big timer this year.
Anybody that would be interested in attending, there are plenty of spaces that are available for this right now, although cutting short pretty quickly.
Yeah, you want to say this, we should say this. There is it's going to be a limited number of people because of what we can hold. And that's this 225 is our max.
Okay, and anybody who wants extra information or to purchase tickets to attend this particular event?
The online, the Heritage website,
which is heritagemuseums.org.
.org has done a great job. I think the improvements in the website in total are super. And now it's easy to navigate to get to it.
Terrific. So we have that kind of kicks off the entire festival, and then
it is the kickoff event. It really is, and I think it's wonderful the timing of it. It's on the very first day, the Friday. And this year, the nice thing about it is that Durr will be here, and I haven't seen the official go on this, but I think we're going to do it. He's going to do a tree walk. He's a great dendrologist as well. And I'm going to do a hydrangea walk. It'll be a sign-up thing special for that.
Okay. All right, well, we are going to continue having podcasts with you down the line.
Good.
I want to thank you for your time today, Mal. This has been terrific.
Great.
And I feel like I've learned a terrific amount. I hope everybody else has as well. But again, as you mentioned, there are things that are happening in regards to the Hydrangea Festival that is coming up in the beginning of July. And definitely head to our website, which is heritagemuseums.org.
If you've still got time going.
Yeah.
I might add this too. What people should take advantage of during the festival is after the opening event, every one of those days there are tours of here, and it all comes for the same as your entry ticket price to come here. Mm-hmm. And every afternoon, mostly it's me, we do a short section on something specific that you might not see otherwise. Yes, we maybe talk a little bit about, there is a summer pinch pruning you can do to the macrophyllus. I talk about diseases, not that there are many. It's a pretty benign genus in that regard, which is good. We cover a few of those things, and that's where the propagation thing started. Okay. So it's good. They get a chance. And last year, I had 2 ladies that came to every single one of them, which is good.
Hopefully they'll be back this year.
I wouldn't be the least bit surprised. I see people, I don't remember their names, but I said, you've been here before.
Well, they're going to be as dedicated as you are, which is a wonderful thing.
Well, I hope so, and many have really become pretty serious about it. I was sitting here, and I was getting ready to go over there and prune, and a lady came, and I watched her. She walked around with a pretty serious view. Mm-hmm. She lives here in Sandwich. Anyway, she said, I see what you're doing, and she says, I've come every week, and I says, I see what you've done in the week since I was here, and so I go home and I emulate it on my own plants. Well, the best of it was, I said, you could do better than that. Mm-hmm. You can become a volunteer here with us and work with us. Well, she thought that was absolutely marvelous. So she's going to email me. I got her name, and she'd love to come and spend the morning every week, and why not?
Well, you've got a really hardy crew. Not to get a little bit off track, but they're wonderful. They're here. They're passionate. They get right to work.
They do, and we had. I just had 2 people with me this morning, and we were doing the final. And this is really what we're doing now is what we call step 2 pruning to the max. Mm-hmm. And this is the detail pruning. In other words, you're down to what's survived. Mm-hmm. But there's little tricky bits to this. It goes fairly quickly, but you got to do it because we want all the brown sticks gone. Now you see them on some of the plants when we left them because there's always that optimism.
Yeah.
Huh? Sadly, I know what the end result's going to be because I've done this for so long, but we don't give up.
No, that's a good point. Never give up.
Well, you can't give up, and you see, there's some interesting things just looking here. You see this plant right here to our left? Look, all the nice growth on it.
Yes.
And that's a plant called Lady in Red, and it's marvelous. It is the hardiest of all macrophyllus we have ever seen. It's a lace cap flower, not particularly meritorious by its flower form, but its hardiness is without a doubt the best that's in this garden.
You can obviously tell because it's a little bit higher than everybody else.
Well,
it's really taking
and I've cut it back.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I've cut it back. There's some over there. It tends to be a rangy plant. Mm-hmm. And so by my judicious pruning, I'm trying to give it a better form and say, I want you to behave.
Do you talk to the plants?
I do.
Do they respond?
Sometime.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, look at it this way. I'm the guy with the pruners.
You give me a whole new vision now. Well, I want to make sure that you are able to get back. I know that you were doing a little bit of pruning when we were arriving.
I was doing that just waiting for you.
Okay.
Some of this will get done. I'm going to do a little bit more here, but that's it. And then I got to go up and take care of those plants that have arrived today. When you receive plants, and this is from Bailey, which is great, and they've sent us a bunch of plants. And the nice thing, wonderful thing about Bailey is they're supplying us, at Hydrangea U, each attendee receives a plant to take home and put in their garden. And Bailey are supplying all the plants this year.
Oh, wonderful.
And they're nice size. They're full 1 gallons. They're beautiful. I mean, it's really great.
Well, that's something to look forward to.
They've been enormously generous to us. I can't say enough for them.
Well, Mal, I really want to take the time to thank you for your
You're
time
welcome.
today.
You're welcome.
And as I said, we will be talking to you down the line. We've got a lot to look forward to.
There is, and I think it's a great thing. Anybody that's interested, and even though we talk about hydrangeas, so many of the things that we are sharing about hydrangea culture are applicable to a whole bunch of other woody ornamentals.
Mm-hmm. Well, we can explore that next time.
Yeah.
All right, wonderful.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of The Insider at Heritage Museums and Gardens. We've, of course, been speaking with Heritage Museums and Gardens Curator of Hydrangeas, Mal Condon. You can hear more interviews like this one by finding us on iTunes and YouTube. And of course, more information about Heritage Museums and Gardens, the programs we discussed today, our exhibits, and other upcoming programming can be found on our website at heritagemuseums.org. Until next time, thank you so much for listening.